Story 1. The Freezer Full of Lobster. Greetings, dear listeners. Before I begin, I ask for a small favor. Please subscribe to this channel and press the like button. It truly helps stories like this find the people who need them. And write in the comments which city or country you're listening from. Every name, every place, reminds me that none of us are as alone as we sometimes feel. Now, let me tell you my story. The house learned how to be quiet long before my son took my pension money. It learned silence the way old bones learn cold, slowly, permanently, without complaint. When my husband Thomas died, the walls absorbed his absence like damp plaster absorbs rain. The creak of the staircase softened. The radio stopped turning on by accident. Even the refrigerator seemed to hum more cautiously, as if afraid to remind me it existed. For years after, I lived carefully. Carefully meant predictably. Predictably meant invisibly. I woke at 6. I brewed weak coffee, half the scoop, never more. I toasted bread until it was warm but not browned, because browned meant waste. I folded my clothes as soon as I took them off so they wouldn't wrinkle and tempt me into buying something new. I saved things not because I planned to use them, but because saving had become proof that I was still responsible. Still worthy. And then there was Harold. My son. My only child. I used to tell people he was finding himself. That sounded kinder than the truth. The truth was that Harold had never learned to stand still long enough to become anyone. He drifted from job to job, idea to idea, apartment to apartment. When rent rose, when roommates complained, when bosses asked for consistency, Harold moved on. And each time, eventually, he came back to me. Not all at once. Not dramatically. Just little by little. First it was laundry. Then groceries. Just until payday. Then mail delivered to my address. Then the spare room, temporarily. I told myself this was what mothers did. The first time he borrowed money, he looked ashamed. He wouldn't meet my eyes. The 10th time, he didn't even sit down. By the 20th, he joked about it. You don't need it like I do, Mom, he'd say, already halfway out the door. You're retired. You're set. Set. That word stayed with me. Set like concrete. Set like something that no longer moved. I lived on my pension and a small survivor's benefit from Thomas. It wasn't much, but it was enough, because I made it enough. I clipped coupons. I froze leftovers. I bought shoes once every 5 years. Harold, on the other hand, lived as if tomorrow were an abstract concept. A rumor. Something other people worried about. And still, I cooked for him. Still, I waited up when he didn't come home. Still, I folded his laundry and pretended not to notice the empty liquor bottles hidden behind the trash bags. Love makes liars of us all. The morning he took my pension money, the sky was a flat gray. The kind that presses down on your shoulders without raining. Harold was restless. I could always tell. He paced while pretending not to pace. He opened the fridge even though he knew what was inside. He checked his phone every few seconds. Mom, he said finally, leaning against the counter. I need a favor. I didn't answer right away. I was peeling potatoes. Cheap ones. Sprouting slightly. I peeled carefully around the bad spots. What kind of favor? I asked. He sighed like I was exhausting him already. The guys are going up north, he said. Fishing. Just a few days. I need some cash. I kept peeling. How much? I asked. He named the number without hesitation. It was my entire monthly pension. I stopped peeling. That's my money for food, I said quietly. He laughed. Not cruelly. Casually. You'll be fine, he said. You barely eat. There it was. Not concern. Not apology. A diagnosis. I turned to look at him then. Really look. He was 38 years old. Tall. Broad-shouldered. Healthy. His hair was sun-lightened from too many summers spent not working. His hands were strong. Hands that could have built something, fixed something, held responsibility. Instead, they were always open, palm up. I'll pay it back, he said, already pulling on his jacket. Promise. I didn't believe him, but I handed him the card anyway. Because mothers like me don't refuse. We postpone refusal. We delay it. We soften it. We tell ourselves next time. He kissed my cheek. Smelled like cheap cologne and impatience. Don't worry, he said. There's soup in the pantry. The door slammed behind him. The house inhaled, then exhaled. I stood there for a long time with the potato peeler in my hand, staring at the closed door like it might open again if I waited correctly. It didn't. That evening, hunger arrived quietly. Not sharply, not painfully, just persistently. I opened the pantry. No soup. I checked again, as if it might appear if I looked from a different angle. Nothing. The refrigerator held half a stick of butter and a jar of mustard so old the label had faded. I sat down at the table. The chair creaked, startled by the sudden use. I told myself I'd eat in the morning. Hunger is easier to negotiate with when it's dark. That night, sleep avoided me. My stomach growled softly, like it was embarrassed. I thought about all the things in the house that existed only to be preserved. The china I never used. The freezer I kept empty, just in case. The coin collection Thomas left behind, tucked away like a secret. Things waiting for a future that never arrived. By morning, something inside me had shifted. Not anger. Not yet. Something colder. Clearer. I brewed coffee with a full scoop. I drank it slowly. Then I picked up the phone. I did not cry when I hung up the phone. That surprised me. For years, tears had come easily. Whenever Harold missed another birthday, whenever the rent notice appeared in the mailbox with his name on it, whenever I found myself defending him to neighbors who had long stopped asking. But that morning, after dialing the number I'd circled months earlier in the classifieds and speaking calmly to a man who said, "Yes, ma'am, I do house calls," my eyes remained dry. It wasn't numbness. It was focus. I walked through the house differently then, as if seeing it from above. From a distance. As if it belonged to someone else. In the dining room stood the cabinet I had polished every Sunday for 30 years. Inside it, behind glass, sat the china Thomas and I received as a wedding gift. 12 place settings. White with a thin blue rim. We used them exactly twice. Once for Christmas when Harold was 6, and once for Thomas's promotion dinner, the year before his heart gave out. After that, they became an idea. For guests. For special occasions. For someday. Someday never RSVP'd. I opened the cabinet and lifted one plate. It was lighter than I remembered. Or maybe my hands were stronger than I gave them credit for. I turned it over and saw the maker's mark, still crisp. I imagined it shattered on the floor. The thought didn't hurt. That told me everything. At 10 sharp, the doorbell rang. I startled anyway. Old habits don't die quickly. The man on the porch was younger than I expected. Mid-50s. Neatly dressed. Kind eyes that missed nothing. "Mrs. Adler?" he asked. "Yes," I said. My voice sounded steady. It felt like someone else's. "I'm Frank Collins," he said. "You called about an appraisal." I stepped aside. "Come in." He took off his shoes without being asked. That small courtesy struck me harder than it should have. We started with the obvious things. The dining set. The coin collection. The silver candlesticks. Frank worked carefully. Methodically. He explained things without talking down to me. When he quoted prices, he didn't rush my reaction. "These are worth more than you think," he said at one point, gently surprised. "I know," I replied. That was the truth. I had always known. I had just been waiting for someone else to deserve them. When he finished, he named a total that made my knees feel weak. "Are you sure?" he asked. "You don't want to keep anything for your son?" There it was. The test. I looked at the empty cabinet. At the dust outlines where things had rested for decades. "My son already took what he wanted," I said. Frank nodded slowly. "I can have a truck here this afternoon," he said. "If you want." "Yes," I said. "I want." After he left, the house felt lighter, as if it had exhaled something old and stale. I didn't wait. I put on my coat. My good coat, the one I saved for church and funerals, and took the bus into town. The grocery store doors opened with a hiss, releasing a rush of warmth and smell that nearly overwhelmed me. Bread, coffee, citrus. For years, I had walked these aisles with my eyes down, calculator running in my head, fingers hovering over price tags like they burned. That day, I walked slowly, deliberately. I bought things because I wanted them. Butter that came wrapped in gold foil. Cheese that smelled sharp and alive. Bread that was still warm. I bought steak. I had not bought steak since Thomas was alive. At the seafood counter, I hesitated. Then I said it. I'll take the lobster tails. The clerk looked at me twice. Maybe he thought I'd misspoken. Maybe he thought I couldn't afford them. He wrapped them carefully. I felt tall. By the time I got home, the truck was already there. Two men were carrying out the dining table. The chairs followed, one by one, like obedient children. I watched from the doorway. With each piece that left, something loosened in my chest. Frank handed me an envelope. "Call me if you change your mind about anything else," he said. "I won't," I replied. That night, I cooked. Really cooked. I set the table with a single plate. One of the everyday ones. I poured myself a glass of wine Thomas had bought years ago, for later. Later had arrived. I ate slowly. I didn't turn on the television. I listened to the quiet, which no longer felt hollow. The freezer hummed, no longer empty. I slept deeply. When Harold called the next afternoon, I let it ring twice. "Mom," he said, breezy. "We're heading back tonight. You good?" "I'm fine," I said. There was a pause. "You sound different." "I ate," I replied. He laughed. "Told you you'd be fine." I hung up before he could say more. When his car pulled into the driveway that evening, the sun was low, casting long shadows across the lawn. He came in loud, sunburned, happy. "Smells good," he said, tossing his bag down. "What did you make?" "Dinner," I said. He went straight to the freezer. I watched from the table. He opened it, and the house, which had learned silence long ago, finally heard a sound it had never known before. Fear. Harold didn't scream. That surprised me. Instead, he froze, one hand still on the freezer handle, his body bent slightly forward as if whatever he was seeing had physically pushed him back. The freezer light spilled out onto the kitchen floor, bright and unforgiving. For a long moment, he just stared. Lobster tails wrapped in thick white paper. Vacuum-sealed steaks stacked neatly. Bags of shrimp. Boxes of ice cream I hadn't allowed myself to buy since Harold was a teenager. The freezer was full. Heavy. Certain. "What?" he finally said. The word came out thin, unfinished. I sat at the table with my hands folded, watching him like one watches weather roll in, no longer afraid. Just observant. "Mom." He turned slowly. "What is this?" "Food," I said. He laughed once, sharply. "No, I mean, where did you get all this?" I tilted my head. "The same place you got your fishing trip," I replied. His smile faltered. "That's not funny. I'm not joking." He shut the freezer door carefully, as if afraid it might disappear if he moved too fast. Then he opened it again. Still there. His face changed then, not all at once, but in stages. Confusion gave way to calculation. Calculation to suspicion. "You didn't use the card again, did you?" he asked. "No," I said. "Then how?" I stood up slowly. My knees protested, but I ignored them. I walked to the counter and poured myself a glass of water. I could feel his eyes on my back, searching for weakness, for apology, for the old cues. I gave him none. "I sold the dining set," I said. "And your father's coins. And the silver." The glass slipped from his hand and clattered into the sink. "You what?" "I sold them," I repeated. "To eat." He stared at me as if I'd confessed to arson. "You can't just sell that stuff," he said. "That was family property." It was my property, I corrected gently. His jaw tightened. That was my inheritance. There it was. Not concern. Not shock. Ownership. I looked at him then. Really looked. And saw something I had refused to see for years. Harold wasn't careless. He was confident. Confident that my life existed as an extension of his. Confident that my things were already his, merely waiting for paperwork and time. You weren't supposed to touch that, he said. His voice rose. That was for later. Later never fed me, I replied. He ran a hand through his hair, pacing now, energy crackling off him. You didn't have to do this, he said. You could have called. I would have figured something out. I let that sit. Like you figured out the pantry. I asked quietly. He stopped pacing. That was just empty, I finished. His face flushed. You're being dramatic. No, I said. I'm being awake. He stared at me, searching for the old version of me, the one who apologized for existing, who softened every sentence, who bent. She didn't answer. Instead, I walked past him and opened the refrigerator. I took out a wrapped steak and set it on the counter. I'm making dinner, I said. You can stay if you want. Or you can leave. You're acting crazy, he said. I turned to face him. No, I said calmly. Crazy is starving in a house full of things you're not allowed to use. Something flickered in his eyes then. Fear. Not of me. Of loss. You think you can just cut me out? He said. I live here. For now, I replied. That night, he didn't eat. He sat in the living room, scrolling angrily through his phone, slamming drawers, opening cabinets that were suddenly empty. I cooked myself dinner. I ate slowly. The next morning, I woke to silence. Not the old hollow silence. A waiting silence. Harold stood in the kitchen when I came in, arms crossed. We need to talk, he said. I know, I replied. I'm not leaving, he said flatly. You can't just decide that. I smiled faintly. You're right, I said. I can't decide everything. I reached into my pocket and placed an envelope on the table. But I can decide this. He opened it. Inside was a typed notice. Eviction. 30 days. Legal. Signed. Filed. His face drained of color. You wouldn't, he whispered. I already did, I said. The house was quiet again. But this time, the quiet was mine. Harold did not speak for a long time after he read the notice. He sat at the kitchen table, elbows braced on the wood, staring at the paper as if it might rearrange itself into something kinder if he waited long enough. The morning light fell across his hands, the same hands I had kissed when he was a baby, the same hands that had learned to take without ever learning how to give. You wouldn't really do this, he said finally. His voice was quieter now. Not angry. Uncertain. I poured myself coffee. Strong. Hot. I didn't rush to answer. I already have, I said. He looked up at me then, really looked, and for the first time I saw it land. Not the eviction. Not the loss of comfort. But the realization that the woman standing in front of him was not the one he had memorized. You're choosing food over me, he said, accusing. I smiled sadly. No, I replied. I'm choosing life over hunger. He pushed the chair back so hard it scraped the floor. You're my mother, he snapped. You're supposed to help me. I nodded. And I did, I said. For nearly 40 years. He laughed bitterly. So that's it. You sell off everything, buy fancy food, and throw me out. I thought of the dining set. The silver. The years of preservation. The way I had treated objects better than myself. I sold things, I said, so I could remember that I am not one of them. He didn't understand that. He packed loudly, sloppily, as if noise could bruise me back into submission. Drawers slammed. Boxes thudded. Old anger filled the hallways where quiet had once lived. I stayed in the kitchen. I cooked. That night, I made lobster. I ate alone at the table, butter dripping onto the plate, hands sticky and unapologetic. The house smelled rich and warm and alive. Harold stood in the doorway once, watching. You'll regret this, he said. Maybe, I replied. But not today. He left before dawn. The house did not mourn him. In the weeks that followed, something unexpected happened. I slept better. I walked differently, slower, but steadier. I stopped apologizing when I spoke. I filled the freezer when it emptied. I filled the fridge again and again. I sold more things. Not in anger, in intention. The spare room became a study. The dining room became empty space filled with light. The house exhaled with me. Harold called once, then twice, then stopped. I didn't chase. One afternoon, months later, I sat at the table with a cup of coffee and a slice of bread thick with butter. The freezer hummed quietly in the background, full, reliable, present. I realized then what I had really saved all those years. Not china, not silver, not inheritance. I had saved permission. Permission to live. And once I finally used it, I had no desire to give it back. Dear listeners, this story is not about food. It is about what happens when we confuse sacrifice with love, and patience with obligation. There is a difference between helping someone stand, and letting them lean on your spine until you break. If this story touched you, please like and subscribe. Share